Good day everyone, I am Jimuel Moral and our topic is fielding the affirmative case. So in every debate, there's always a two side, affirmative and the negative. The affirmative is the team who support the proposition and the negative is has objectives to counter or to prove that the claim of the affirmative is wrong. So if you're going to define literally what is affirmative case, so based on the dictionary, it means confirming or asserting something as true or valid. But in a debate, in the word of debate, affirmative case is the story of the affirmative team aim to persuade the judge to vote or support their affirmative plan. So there are three objectives of the affirmative case. First is establish the prima facie case. So what is prima facie case? Ano ba yun? So in Latin, prima facie case means for at first sight or sa unang pagtingin dapat mapatunayan na agad or compelling na agad sa judge na something true or valid yung claim. So in a debate naman, if we're going to define what is prima facie case, so true itself provides a good and sufficient reason for adopting the proposition. Dapat may effective issue statement to persuade the judge to support the proposition at the first sight. So second is provide the highest degree of probability. So as an in the affirmative, you need to provide the highest degree of probability. Yung mataas na tsansa na yung call for action or proposition even in the value or policy debate ay is mangyayari or malaki yung posibilidad na mangyari. And last is the burden of proof. Siyempre, the burden of proof, pruweba or evidence, ang pinakamalakas na support mo sa proposition or claim in a debate to persuade the judge and satisfy them with the proof na ihahain mo sa kanila. Next is the propositions of policy affirmative cases. So in developing the affirmative case on a proposition policy, kasi bukod yung proposition policy at proposition for value policy. Yung proposition for value policy, kalimitan tumutukoy siya sa mga proposal kung saan naapektuhan or inihahain na baguhin yung value ng life or ng isang tao. Samantala yung policy is call for action for a certain thing na gustong baguhin. And the advocate is responsible for presenting the prima facie case. So, na-mention natin kanina kung ano ba yung prima facie case. So, in deciding whether or not to adopt new policy, any reasonable person is likely to ask 3 questions. So, may 3 questions na dapat itanong sa isang tao kung dapat bang i-adapt or hindi yung bagong policy. So number 1 is, do I perceive a need for a change? Or kailangan ba natin talaga ng pagbabago? Is there some harm or evil in the world that needs to be eliminated? Or kailangan ba natin ng ma-eliminate yung harm or evil na mayroon tayo dito sa mundo? Number 2 is this a problem likely to go away by itself, or does some action really need to be taken? Or is it inherent the world as is it? So, kailangan ba talagang gumawa ng isang action para mabago yung isang bagay, or talagang minana ng mundo kung ano ba talaga yung bagay na yun or nakasanayan na? Number 3 is, if this policy is adopted, will it really help? Will this solve the problem and not cause too many new problems? So, if yung policy na yun ay i-adapt, makakatulong ba talaga yun? Or yung policy na yun ba talaga ay masusolve yung problem at hindi pa mag-cause ng mas marami pang problema? So in a debate, this question or issues are referred to as harm, inherency, or solvency. So yung mga stock issues na yun or questions ay tinatawag nating harm, inherency, or solvency. So the affirmative must address all this in order for debate to begin, and most of the clash in the debate will revolve around them. So, kalimitan, yung affirmative, dapat mas ma-address muna yung harm, inherency, or solvency para mag-begin yung debate. At yung topic ay mag-iikot lang dun. So, letter A, requirement to prove harm. So, the first is, if there is no harm in the world, there is no reason to change things. Siyempre, kung wala nga namang harm, bakit pa natin babaguhin yung mga bagay-bagay sa mundo. So, existence of harm helps establish the need for a change. So, as nag-exist yung harm, kailangan nating ma-establish yung pagbabago. Kaya nga, dapat ma-eliminate natin yung harm. So next is, without harm, there is no justification for a resolution to a change. So napakahalaga rin ng harm kasi paano natin ma-justify yung resolution para sa isang claim natin or call for action. So next is, harm identified by the affirmative should be significant, compelling, and widespread. So yung affirmative, dapat yung harm na makikita nila or iko-call for action nila ay talagang karapat dapat na at maituring na isang harm or yung makakapamilit or nakakaapekto talaga ng malaki sa isang tao, isang bagay. So next is, in order to establish a compelling harm, so para daw makapag-establish ng nakakapamilit na harm, so the affirmative must establish qualitative harm, are that points to diminish quality of life or denial of some important value. So, kagaya ng sinasabi ko kanina sa value fallacy, ito qualitative harm, tumutukoy ito sa quality of life or denial of some important value. So, yung quantitative naman, pag sinabi natin quantitative, it always signifies numbers, So, sabi rito, it pertains to a number of people affected the harm to that it is compelling. So, kapag large number of people yung naaapektuhan ng isang harm, siya ay isang compelling harm na need natin ng proposal or call for a change or policy para ma-eliminate yung harm na yun.
My report is all about requirement to improve the inherency, which is it is the cause of a problem or lately permanent factors within the statu quo and a major reform on the level of resolution change and need to alter them. Then inherency is established, which is sinasabi dito sa inherency kung saan yung mga mana na nagiging cause ng problema sa mga relatives or something na naiiwan. Then we have two types of inherency. It is a structural inherency and attitudinal inherency, which is structural inherency is to demonstrate that the harm is permanent built in the status quo. It is also the major revision of the status quo are needed in order to eliminate the harm, which is to establish in a good term on how inherency will be given or will be chosen to give. And attitudinal inherency is to be suggested at attitudes present solution of the identified problem within the status, which is it defines it on how you make an attitude for this presentation or make a good conduct for the people who give that inherency. Letter C. Requirement to prove solvency. The affirmative must address the issue of solvency by proving that its plan would work, that it would solve the problem better than the status quo would and would avoid side effects that will be worse than the harm itself. And the major parts of a plan are in common usage designated as blocks. The following insert shows the basic plan format. And recommended purpose it's talk about the basic format that it makes how to solve or being providing that is plan on how would it work or solve the problem in a better way to avoid the effect of will be the worst or make a harm by itself. This is the basic plan format. Flank 1 agency. Our first one is Blank 1 agency. It is the affirmative species who will be responsible for administering its plan. Its talk all about is how it's talk about who is the responsible for the planning. If in this situation in the agency it's the one who pick, or we should say the responsible for the affirmative plan of administering. Flank 2 is mandates. In most debates, this is as essence of the plan. The affirmative species the mandates given to the agency that administer the plan. In mandates, it is how we essence the plans or make the plans for for a good or or to make or to make or given to make an agency that make the plan administers. Blank 3. Enforcement. The affirmative speaks how the plan will be enforced. Enforcement. It's talk about on how the inherency or the sol- the solving to make or para makaiwas for the enforcement na nangyayari dun sa affirmative speech na ginawa natin o kung paano gumawa ng enforcement sa basic plan. Flank 4, funding and staffing. The affirmative speaks how it will get the fund staff to permit the agency to carry out its mandates. For this one, it's kung paano tayo mag-budget and yung sa mga staff na magkakaroon yung agency na that would carry out of its mandates. Basic plan format. Flank 5. Addendum. The affirmative such as further provision as may be necessary to complete the implementation of its plan. The second required of solvency is that the plan solve the harm to a greater extent that status quo known as plan meet need or plan meet advantage, which is well shown or talk about. It is that solvency is to how to solve the problem or to make or to make a plan that make someone or neither in anyone that make no harm or greater extension that's the status quo that it means is for plan meet need o yung mga kinakailangan natin sa solvency or sinasabi nga natin is dun sa for inherency. That's all lang. Thank you.
Letter D. Requirement to prove the advantages. Advantages refers to the benefits of gains that the affirmative claims will result from adopting its plan, which must be shown to outweigh the advantages. Second, the advantages should have a clearly identified impact or substantial measure of importance that they can be weighed positively against disadvantages. The advantages should be integrated with the needs. Letter E. Requirement to defend typicality. Typicality is certainly a theoretical issue, often the single most important issue in the debate, but is considered independently of the stock issue. Second, the judge first considered typicality. Last, if the plan is typical, the judge will examine the stock issue. If the plan is not typical, the judge need not to examine the stock issue. Ang nag-iisang pinakamahalagang issue daw po ay ang debate, ngunit ito ay sinasang-alang-alang. Susuriin ng judge ang issue ng stock kung ang plano ay hindi typical. F. Preparation. Once the manuscript for the affirmative speech is completed, advocates have to prepare brief short speech segment that will use to refute negative attack and to extend affirmative arguments. Successful debaters also will be able to produce well-executed extension. Extension consists of new evidence and analysis to carry forward arguments introduced earlier. Once na makompleto ang speech ng tagapagsalita, ay kailangan maghanda ng brief short speech segment. Iyon ang gagamitin upang mapabulaanan ang mga negative attack at upang palawakin ang mga affirmative argument. Magagawa rin ng mga matagumpay na debaters gumawa ng mahusay na naisakatuparan na ang extension. Ang extension ay binubuo ng mga bagong ebidensya at pagsusuri ng dadalhin pasulong ng mga argumento na ipinakikilala nila. Building for optimum capability. The affirmative has to obtain its case and deploy its evidence so as to achieve the optimum balance of offensive and defensive capabilities. Second, in building their case, advocates have to anticipate the probable areas of negative attack. Prudent affirmative will consider the most likely and affirmative attack against their case and build in reasonable defense provisions. Dito naman po ay kailangan bumuo ng kaso at ipakalat ang ebidensya nito upang makamit ang pinakamabuting balanse ng offensive and defensive capabilities. Sa pagbuo ng kanilang kaso, kailangan ng mga tagapagtaguyod asahan ang posibleng lugar ng negatibong atake. Affirmative debate approaches. Debate approaches may be disregard the tradition framework in favor of storytelling, hip-hop music, and film poetry and other novel challenges to the adventational approaches. Critical approaches focus on psychological and value-based interpretation of professional terms, and performance-based approaches find Charles in music, visual communication, role-playing, and other creative from the self-expression. Yun lang po, sir. Thank you.